The element of time in music is one of the most crucial aspects, and at the same time, it's one of the one aspects that we understand maybe the least, and it's probably the one, unfortunately, that Western musicians anyway pay the least attention to. Different musical styles and different musical cultures pay different degrees of attention to time and rhythm. So what I'm going to tell you applies to Western music. Western music, fortunately, is pretty simple in terms of rhythm. If you listen to something like West African drumming or North Indian raga music, they're much more complex in terms of rhythm, but Western music with its threes and fours is really wonderful, and it's what I grew up with. So that's what we're going to talk about. First of all, let's talk about terms like pulse and beat. I'm going to turn to my side here, and I'm going to turn on a metronome. And I want you to listen to that sound, and then as you listen, see if you can start to follow the pulse that you hear. Okay, I'll stop that before it gets annoying. That is a series of regularly spaced stimuli, sonic stimuli. And one of the things that our brain does when we hear regularly spaced stimuli is that our brains try to figure out, okay, is another one of those going to happen? We are wired to expect things and to take in our environment around us and to process things to remain safe. For example, if you hear an animal running behind you, you better turn around and see if it's chasing you. Or if you hear a thunder off in the distance, you learn to expect that a storm might be coming. That regular pulse invokes something in our brains that's a function called entrainment. Entrainment is the need that our brains and bodies have to complete a pattern, to follow a pattern. And it is the mental and memory function that enables us to do music together. And that's one of the most wonderful things about music, of course, is that when you see or hear this, your brain interprets those stimuli and your body starts to feel ways to go along with that. So you can go tap, 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 or, snap your fingers or whatever. Now, that pulse or beat in music has several different levels. So, for example, the pulse that we hear going on, there are going to be several different levels of pulsation within a piece. So there's the main beat, for example, in a piece of music, like that's about the tempo that a march would be. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, left, right. But that's not going to be the only thing that's happening in the music. Sometimes things will go twice that fast. Tut, 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 or 3 times that fast. Tut, 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 or maybe twice as slow, like ta, 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 ta. Those durations that happen over the main pulse level, over the main beat level, are what we refer to as rhythm. Rhythm is the actual durations of the music going on. So that's the difference maybe between beat and rhythm. I know those terms get used differently in popular music, that a beat, for example, is a particular term in pop music and in hip hop. I've attached or followed this video with another video about the distinction between beat and rhythm that I think is really helpful. Now, in Western music, we organize most of our music into 2 basic kinds of things. I'm going to treat them just as 2 kinds, and I'll show you why in a minute. One is music that organizes itself into groups of 2 beats. This is called duple meter, or 2, right? So if I'm going to do that, let me adjust my metronome here. Sorry. To do 2 beats per cycle. Darn it. Here we go. Here we go. One, two, 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 one, two. That pattern is one of the most basic ones in Western music, certainly in human music too, because there's a lot about our bodies that's duple, right foot, left foot, right hand, left hand, things like that. So a lot of music is in duple meter. A lot of music that you'll encounter has actually 4 beats per pattern. That's called, the grouping of beats is called meter, by the way. There is such a thing as quadruple meter or 4/4 meter. You'll hear a lot about that. That's one of the most common meters in Western music, and it has 4 beats per group. But really, when you're listening to it, it's almost impossible unless you know, unless you can see the notation to determine whether it's 2 beats per pattern or 4 beats per pattern. Those patterns, by the way, are called measures or bars in music. So, for example, when you talk about a bar of duple meter, that's 1, 2. Okay. The other one is triple meter. Oh, let me give you an example of duple meter. A lot of familiar tunes you know, but if you know Yankee Doodle. Yankee Doodle went to town a-riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. If you think of down as 1 and 2 as up, then that's duple meter. Another metric pattern in Western music is triple meter. We have 3 beats per pattern. That's a little less typical, but I've heard somebody describe that our hearts beat in triple rhythm, like in, out, rest, in, out, rest, in, out, rest. I'm not a physician or a nurse, so I don't know whether that's true or not. But for example, the tune My Country 'Tis of Thee is in triple meter. That has 3 beats per measure. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Okay. Let me play you an example of 3 beats per measure with our metronome. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, in addition, in Western music, you can divide those beats differently. Most Western music divides the beats into 2. So, Yankee Doodle went to town a-riding on a pony. Did you hear that there are some notes that occur in between the beats? Those beats are divided evenly into 2s, and those are called simple meter, where the beat divides into 2s and 4s. My Country 'Tis of Thee is also in simple triple meter. My country 'tis of thee. If you imagine that faster pulse going on, da 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 da, and later on in that same tune, from every mountainside. There are divisions of the beat there. So that's simple meter, where meter divides into 2s or 4s. In compound meter, though, the beats divide into 3s, and that gets a sense of pa 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 pa, 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a is compound duple meter. A good example of that is Pop Goes the Weasel. All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought was all in fun. Pop goes the weasel. So here I am singing on the internet, Pop Goes the Weasel, for hundreds and hundreds of college students. I hope you appreciate that. There is such a thing as triple compound meter. It's not as common, but one example of that is the example I'm going to play you here right now, just very briefly, of a piece by Bach called Jesus, Joy of Man's Desiring. Again, the term rhythm, as we discuss it, has to do less with the underlying beat and more with the durations of the actual music itself. So, for example, if I'm going to do Pop Goes the Weasel again, dum ba bum ba 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 bum ba bum ba bum ba ba dum bum ba bum ba ba da da bum 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 ba ba dum. One of the aspects of that is just the rhythm. Ta 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 ta. And you saw my hand was moving to the beat, but the tas that I was saying there are the actual rhythm. You can also talk about time aspects of music in larger structures. For example, when we talk about musical form a little bit, then you talk about comparisons of like larger sections of music. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Let's go on to talk about melody.